as well as our country. Today, we are very much happy to have with us an eminent historian and distinguished speaker, Professor Omiyo Prasad Sen. On behalf of Bangiya Itihas Samiti, Kolkata, I have welcomed Professor Sen. At the very beginning, I have a small request to all of the participants. Please unmute your video and audio during the lecture. Okay. Before we start our lecture, I want to request our Honorable General Secretary of Bangiya Itihas Samiti, Kolkata, Dr. Siddhartha Guru Roy, to say something about today's webinar and also our speaker. Over to Dr. Roy.
Yes, thank you, Prosenjit. I think I am audible. Thank you, Prosenjit.
Yes, sir, you are perfectly audible.
Thank you. Professor Omiyo Prasad Sen is a distinguished scholar in the field of cultural and intellectual history of modern India. He was a professor of history of modern India in Jamia Millia University. He was also associated with several institutions of repute in India and abroad. He authored and edited a number of books and also had written a good number of very erudite articles. His phenomenal work, Hindu Revivalism in Bengal, 1872 to 1905, some essays in interpretation, deserves special mention. Today, Professor Sen will speak on Gandhi's Hinduism. We hope this is obviously going to be a very interesting lecture because all of us, the listeners of the webinars, they all are very much interested in the Gandhi's conception of Ramrajya and his conception of Hinduism as well. On behalf of Bangiya Itihas Samiti, I warmly welcome such an outstanding historian and request him to start. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Sen.
Thank you, Dr. Guhurai, for those very kind words. And thank you all who are present, who've taken out time to be present here and to hear whatever I might have to say. I must tender my apology for not being able to speak in Bangla. I can speak marketplace Bangla, but not academic Bangla. So I think it would have been very difficult of me to address such a distinguished gathering in a language that you know far better than I do. So I am trying to play on my own strengths. I probably know English better than I do Bangla, but though my Bangla is reasonably good, otherwise I could have never done any research on 19th century Bangla, which is really my field. So having said those words, I imagine that I will have about 40 minutes or so, and followed by perhaps a few minutes of questions thereafter. Let me begin with the preamble to the paper, which is a series of series of remarks on the question that I wish to take up. I think in 1948, when Mahatma Gandhi fell to the assassin's bullet, together with him, Hinduism also died in the hands of Hindutva, at least nominally. I've been moved to think about Gandhi and his Hinduism, his conception of Hinduism, especially because of developments that have taken place in recent times. Ironically, whereas Gandhi believed Hinduism to be the most tolerant of all religions, he fell at the hands of a person who was a Hindu but proved to be very intolerant. So that, I think, is a paradox that needs to be registered in the minds of people who are thinking on this question. I think I owe you an explanation about why I chose to speak on this subject. And I think it can be explained in two ways. It can be explained by saying how, as a Hindu, I relate to Gandhi's Hinduism. It can also be explained by trying to say how, as a professional historian, I understand Gandhi's conception of Hinduism. Those are two different things, and they don't always converge. They can coexist, and I'm trying to differentiate between the two positions. As a Hindu, I don't think Gandhi was a particularly distinguished Hindu, in the sense that he created no cult, he was not a distinguished philosopher, he did not create any seminal texts on Hinduism which people have followed after him, and so on. But I think, on the other hand, Gandhi did represent certain unique and enduring values of Hinduism, which I think I hope to bring out. Gandhi also often did not think and act like a typical Hindu, and that I found interesting. Those of you who have researched Gandhi would know that he was disowned by Orthodox Hindus, and he was disowned by Orthodox Muslims who found either that he was too much of a Hindu or he was not a Hindu at all. So that is another paradox about Gandhi which we need to negotiate with. What is it that I find interesting in Gandhi as a historian of religion, as a historian of ideas, and so on? My field really is intellectual history, and therefore I present this as a study in intellectual history of modern India, colonial India, with Gandhi located within it. I found 6 reasons why I thought Gandhi was interesting and important to be studied as a subject. First, Gandhi was a critical traditionalist when it came to relating to Hinduism. He did not accept all that he inherited and looked at his own tradition and culture critically. At the same time, he was not a critical traditionalist of the kind that we have in Swami Dayanand Saraswati. If you read the Satyat Prakash, there is no single religion that Swami Dayanand does not critique, and critique very badly, almost on the verge of being vulgar at times. Not just Islam and Christianity and Buddhism or Jainism, but even the Hindu tradition itself. I think Gandhi did not do that. Gandhi was different in his critique of tradition, in his critique of Hinduism. And number 2, Gandhi was also a modernist. This may surprise some, but I think there are strong elements of modernism in Gandhi, even in terms of religion. He believed in reform, and much of what he believed in is a carryover or continuation of reform Hinduism of the 19th century, as I shall try and prove. He supported the idea of reforming and reinterpreting Hinduism, and also believed that tradition had to be changed and understood in different ways as time went on. Tradition was not static. It was not fixed. It was moving. It was dynamic. That made him a modernist. At the same time, Gandhi was not a modernist of the nature of Ram Mohan. You might be surprised to hear this, but I think the difference between Gandhi and Ram Mohan in terms of modern Hinduism, or in terms of understanding Hinduism for a modern Hindu, is simply that whereas Ram Mohan tends to use his understanding of religion in an instrumental way. I mean, some of you at least would have heard of his letter to William Digby, one of his friends, English friends, where he says that religion is fine, but it should lead to political advantage and social comfort. That is a very utilitarian and instrumental view of looking at religion. It doesn't look at religion as religion per se. It looks at religion as bringing on something different from religion itself. So therefore, Gandhi did not use religion in that instrumental sense. He thought of religion and he took religion to be religion by itself. Third, Gandhi was secular, but not in the Western sense of rigidly separating politics and religion, the state and society, and so on and so forth. Even his political idioms like Ram Rajya, somebody just mentioned, Siddhartha Babu mentioned Ram Rajya. Ram Rajya was a mythical religious idiom, and he brought this to politics. So, which clearly underlines the fact that he was willing to merge political understanding and religious idioms as far as he understood them. Fourth, Gandhi was a historicist in the sense that he understood religion to be a historical phenomenon which changed with time. It wasn't static all the time. It moved with context. As the contexts change, so did religion. He definitely thought that the religion of his time, the Hinduism of his time, could not be compared with Hinduism of the Vedas, which some people were trying to do, by the way. But Gandhi wouldn't do that himself. Again, I contrast this. It's interesting that in the course of this presentation, I shall be now and then referring to thinkers of 19th century Bengal, with whom I am a little more familiar than other figures. But these are very interesting connections that I'm trying to make between Gandhi's thought and the thoughts of his 19th century reformist predecessors. I was about to say here that unlike Ramakrishna, Gandhi did not believe that religions were born in God or divinity, or they were delivered by God. I think he treated religions as historical religions, the creation of men, the creation of societies, and the creation of certain social compulsions. Since he did not understand religion to be born of divinity or God himself, his perspective on religion, his perspective on the question of tolerance and so on, were decidedly different from what other contemporaries believed. Interestingly enough, and this is somewhat paradoxical again, even though he believed in historical religion, he also described himself as a Sanatanist. Now, this is interesting because the word Sanatan or Sanatanist gives you the resonance of something fixed in time, something which is unmoving, something which is unchanging. This is a paradox one would have to understand more closely. In fact, ironically enough, the fact that he described himself as a Sanatani tends to hide away or obscure some of his radical ideas in relation to Hinduism. Since he describes himself as a Sanatani, people take it for granted that he followed the orthodox understanding of religion or Hinduism, which is not the case at all. I shall try to demonstrate. But this does serve to mislead us somewhat in understanding Gandhi and his conception of religion. Fifth, Gandhi believed in self-control, self-governance, renunciation, and that is why he was immensely drawn to the opening lines of the Isha Upanishad, Isavasrividam Jagat Kintu Jagata and Jagat. Those of you who know a bit of Bangla history of 19th century would know that this is the Upanishad which moved Maharshi Devendranath Tagore more than anything else. You all know about the story of how a torn page from Isha Upanishad published by Ramohan Roy flew into his hands, and the moment he read those lines, he couldn't understand them, but something about those lines struck him, and he went to Ramchandra Vidyabagish to ask him what those lines meant. Anyway, in a nutshell, the point that I'm making is that the opening lines of Isha Upanishad, which suggest that God pervades all creation, God pervades everything, there is godliness in everything, was, I think, the single most important line for Gandhi, as it was for Devendranath Tagore, and I think Rabindranath too. So there is an interesting continuation that carries on from 19th century into the life and work of Gandhi. However, I must also mention here that Gandhi's renunciation, as in the case of Devendranath Tagore, was not the renunciation of the sannyasi or the ascetic. This is the important and distinguishing quality about 19th century Reform Hinduism. Renunciation, as understood by reformers, ranging from Ramohan down to Rabindranath, did not take the idea of Boiraggo to be formal Boiraggo, leaving the world, getting out of the world. This was not the traditional sannyas or asceticism. It was the asceticism or the Boiraggo of the grihi, the householder. Uh, it's a world which believes in combining this worldly affiliation to God and working for your moral and religious good. Both Gandhi and Devendranath Tagore, and why Devendranath Tagore? I think nearly all reformers that we can think of in the 19th century and early 20th century do believe in the householders' religion, householders' Boiragu. If I can recall Ramohan's words, he called this Brahmanishta Grihasto, the householder whose mind was on the Brahman. For him, for Ramohan, that was the model. And I think this was very much the model for Gandhi too. Finally, point number 6. I find it very interesting that somewhat like our own Vidyashagar, Gandhi has been disowned by both the political left in India and political right in India. There is immense hiatus separating the political left on the one hand and political right on the other hand, with Gandhi in between. They both distance themselves from Gandhi's conception of religion and of Hinduism in particular. Whereas the political left distrusts the very category of religion and blames it for all the evils of our society today, communalism and obscurantism or whatever, superstition and everything else. The political right has politicized religion, which is not what Gandhi attempted to ever do. Gandhi wanted to spiritualize politics. There's an immense difference here between what the political right has been doing and what Gandhi sought to do. Whereas the Hindu right politicizes religion, Gandhi was always trying to spiritualize politics. Whether he succeeded or not is a different question. I shall not go into that. It's a separate argument by itself. Now, having given you those 6 points as to why I was motivated to speak on Gandhi and his conception of religion, the preamble, as I said, let me now proceed with reading out my paper. If I'm going too fast, do warn me, somebody, the administrator, and I will slow down my pace. Okay, here I go. As a student or scholar of history, one is apt to believe that Jinnah was possibly the greatest opponent that Gandhi faced. However, of late, I've been persuaded to revise this opinion in favor of Ambedkar. For one, Jinnah appears to be more an opportunist political opponent of Gandhi than solidly ideological. Ambedkar, by comparison, challenged some of Gandhi's deepest beliefs or convictions, not only on the nature of contemporary politics, but also visionary questions related to how a future society in India might be constituted. His greatest challenge to Gandhi was, and that is Ambedkar's, greatest challenge to Gandhi was in suggesting the path of a social revolution, not mere reform, and also that the deepest social prejudices in Hindu society drew their strength from the religion practiced by upper caste Hindus, Savarna as it's called. This called for meaningful changes in religion itself before one could even consider social matters. So for Ambedkar, as you must be aware, even social reform called at roots a reform of religion, because religion was the site of all social evils in the perception of both Ambedkar and, as I will argue later, even Periyar in the south. Admittedly, the caste question in India that Ambedkar critically interrogated produced much less violence or loss of life than did the increasing frequency or intensity of communal rioting. Even at its peak, communal rioting was potentially not as separatist, threatening, or divisive as was the Hindu-Muslim question. In the 1930s, when Ambedkar and Gandhi were locked in critical debate over the Pune Pact, as you would know, and the reservation question, the possibility of partitioning the subcontinent had not yet arisen. Ambedkar, by comparison, represented an enemy from within, whose challenges threatened to alter not only political questions within mainstream nationalism, but the structures of everyday life within Hindu society. In a situation where the question of separate electorates was fast assuming great importance, projecting the internal unity of Hinduism as against non-Hindus, was obviously the need of the hour. It is no coincidence that the coming of electoral politics in India and the broadening of the franchise, however slowly, aggravated demographic concerns about the relative numbers of Hindu and Muslims. I'm sure this all started with the census in the 1870s, but I've heard, I've seen even Vivekananda express deep worries about the diminishing number of Hindus in the 1890s to Nivedita, much before UN Mukherjee expressed it in his The Dying Hindu Theory in the early years of the 20th century. The Arya Samaj, as you would recall, were trying to converted Hindus back into Hinduism. So by the 1890s, this was certainly an important question. The game of numbers, and it had an important bearing on the state of contemporary politics. Now, broadly speaking, this presentation will have two halves. In the first half, I deal with those values or those ideas or arguments which 19th century Reform Hinduism, the Reform Hinduism movement, which preceded Gandhi, formulated or established, and which Gandhi imbibed and accepted very much in his understanding and conception of Hinduism. The second part will consist of those arguments and ideas where Gandhi departs from these ideas and how he modifies them. And thirdly, I will also briefly touch upon the problem areas in Gandhi's thinking and conception regarding Hinduism. Okay, here I go. My first point about the ideas inherited from 19th century Reform Hinduism. Gandhi wholly accepted the idea that religion permeated every important aspect of the everyday life of the Hindus. In modern India, this originated in Rammohn Roy, who found a reformed religion to be the very site of Hindu self-expression. Contrary to general perception, and this is a mistake that many students and scholars make, they take Rammohn to be essentially a social reformer. I think he's far greater a religious reformer. The things that he said about religion, for example, suggesting that even Shudras and women could have access to the Vedas, is far more revolutionary than his championing Sati. Sati, as you know, was advocated even by Mrityunjay Vidyalankar, who was a traditional Pandit. He's not even a reformer. So I find Rammohan's view of reform Hinduism, his mission to reform and improve and condition Hinduism to the modern age, as far more important. And I think Rammohan's whole mission was to give religion an important place in the way the Hindus were trying to remold or reframe their lives in the 19th century. It is not a coincidence again that it was Rammohan who the first Indian surely, if not on a global level, the first Indian to have used the word Hinduism. I don't think that word ever occurs before him. Missionaries may have used it, but they were not Indians. So there is a point in Rammohan's trying to invent, coin, and use the word Hinduism to describe what even Bankim described as a loose collection of religions. If you read Letters on Hinduism from Bankim, he admits very clearly, even in the 1880s, that Hinduism is a wrong name to describe a whole series of religions. But what Rammohan does is to forge together what he considered to be the unity of Hinduism. Because to reform any religion, you need to concede its unity. You need to recognize the fact that it is internally united. And that is exactly what Rammohan does. My second point is about how 19th century figures, and the brightest of those, including Rammohan and Bankim, think about the place of religion in Hindu society. And I want to read out a very small passage from Bankim's Letters on Hinduism, which brings out this point. In this passage, Bankim is trying to tell us how pervasive religion is in the everyday life of the Hindu. This is from Letters on Hinduism. I quote, "With other people, religion is only a part of life. There are things religious and there are things lay and secular. To the Hindu, his whole life is religious. To the European, his whole relation to God and to the spiritual world is a thing sharply distinguished from his relation to man and to the temporal world. For the Hindu, his relation to God and to man, his spiritual life and temporal life, are incapable of being so separated. I think in the whole history of modern Hinduism, this is an important um, argument, because this is the foundation of what we begin to hear by the 1880s and 1890s very often, especially when Vivekananda speaks at the Chicago Parliament, that, all right, the Westerners are superior in material advancement, they are technologically far more superior, they can teach us a lot of things, but we represent the excellence of spirituality. We can learn technology from you, but you have got to learn spirituality from us. So Hinduism and the Hindus are best represented by spiritual excellence. So this is a trope, as it were, a slogan that modern Hindus raise in order to sort of put themselves at par with Europeans. If the Europeans are superior in one thing, we are superior in something else, and we can exchange each other's talents and so on. Why learn only from the West? We can teach them something too. So you can see the very strongly nationalistic fervor that goes behind this kind of sentiment. The third or fourth, I lost count. 19th century Reformed Hinduism also believes, and this is something unique, I don't think this is so strongly brought out in pre-modern Hinduism, that religion has to show some special concern for the poor. Again, it cannot be a coincidence that Vivekananda comes out with the term Doridra Narayan and Gandhi with the term Horijan. They both mean more or less the same thing, that if God is there on earth, he specially resides in the poor, in the deprived. And one should respect that. Religion means serving the poor before anyone else. It doesn't mean serving everybody. You should especially serve the poor, because that is how you serve God the best. Number 5, God and religion represent a unity of interest, but a variety of conception. That is to say, that the various religions in the world are like so many languages used to describe the same phenomenon. As Ramakrishna would say, that jal, pani, water mean the same thing, really. They are different words to describe the same phenomenon. Right? So, there is something compellingly united and something compellingly important about the basic of religions, which is that it's founded in the idea of God. You may describe God by different names, you may understand religions differently, but you're all aiming at the same thing. You are all traveling on different paths toward the same destination. Your goal is not different, your paths are different. Again, I recall Ramakrishna's famous saying, Jatamot Tatapad. From this comes the next argument, which is this, that all religions have a minimalist approach to the truth, which is to say that if you take off the outer covering of religions, things which are relatively less important, and get to the core of religions, you will find that they all converge at some point. So there is a minimalist definition of religions. And at that point, they all say more or less the same thing. Next, 19th century Hindus and Gandhi too believe, and this is very, very clearly brought out in the Ramakrishna Vivekananda movement, that tolerance is not quite the word to use in India. Because what does tolerance suggest? The word tolerance, it suggests that only you are right, and that you are simply tolerating others. This is a kind of condescending attitude, a very superior, patronizing attitude that you're showing towards other religions. So both Ramakrishna, if you read the Kathamrita by any chance, and here Vivekananda addressing the Chicago Parliament, you will find this made very forcefully. But tolerance is not the right word to use in the Indian context. We believe in orthopraxy. What is orthopraxy? It is the argument which says that you need not have doctrinal unity. You can believe in different things. What is more important is the unity of practice. So, in doctrinal matters, Hinduism may remain very diversified, very different. It doesn't really matter what you believe in. Vivekananda once said that, I can be a Hindu, I can be a Muslim, I can be a Christian. That's all fine. As long as I believe in caste and follow my caste observances, I can believe in any religion. Religion doesn't matter. And I've read at least 2 or 3 works written in the 1890s which say that Hinduism is more a social organization than a religious organization, which are interesting. And I really want to sort of urge students and serious researchers who are interested in this subject to get into this argument as to whether Hinduism is really a social organization more than a religious organization. At the Chicago Parliament, and I want to sort of just read out one line from Vivekananda in 1893. He says, "We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true." So this is something which echoes his own guru, who was severely critical of the word tolerance, of truth claims made by any religion. 19th century reform Hinduism and Gandhi both agree on one other thing, which is this: that religion ultimately is a matter of individual experience. It's a matter of lived experience. It's a matter of personal intuition. Vivekananda says at one place that what Moses or Chaitanya or Guru Nanak or whoever said is not important to me. As long as I do not experience that truth myself, they don't mean anything to me. So religion is a very personal, private experience that you have to perceive, you have to feel in your personality in order to relate to it. It's not something which is given only in scriptures or in the words of some guru. It is something of a deep experience, of a lived experience that one has to talk about. If you gather all these arguments that I've listed before you, we come to the conclusion, and here Gandhi is absolutely unanimous with his predecessors in saying that if we are all traveling on different paths to the same goal, why convert somebody from one religion to other? Gandhi is, despite all his eclecticism, despite all his respect and love for all religions in the world, is as opposed to the idea of conversion as was Ramakrishna, as was Vivekananda, as was Ram Mohan, and certainly Bangiya. So you see there is this common thread running from Ram Mohan downwards to Gandhi, which says that conversion is no good. There is really no need for conversion, because we're all traveling, albeit on different paths, but something which leads us to the same goal. Next, Hinduism allowed its followers, its practitioners, a lot of interpretative freedom to suitably reinterpret tradition. Hindus need not take Hinduism as a fixed category. They had every right to interpret and reinterpret it according to the context of that time. And the context, the historical context, always changes, as we know. The time and place always change in relation to other things. Next, non-Hindus, although they may study religion, should not be teaching Hindus about Hinduism. I urge you to read Bunkim's polemics with Reverend William Hastie of the General Assembly's institution, where he challenges the Europeans' right to interpret Hinduism. It's a challenge which, of course, is culturally nationalistic, but it also has an academic point in the sense that Bunkin believes, and so did Vivekananda, that the practitioners of a religion have the first right to interpret that religion. They are the best people to ask what that religion is. It's easy to critique from outside without understanding the way a religion works. And how a religion really works, only a practitioner can tell you. Of course, 19th century Hinduism and the Hinduism of Gandhi has a political edge to it. Why do I say this? If you look at the very closing lines of Dharma Tattva, Bankim's very seminal work, I'm sure you've all heard about it. Bankim in that last sentence says a very unique thing. What does he say? He says patriotism is the highest dharma. Now, which Hindu before Bankim, before 19th century, would have dared to say that? Bankim, as you know, in the word Dharma Tattva, is trying to define what dharma is. He tries to go into depth about how dharma works here and there and so on. And he concludes on this very unique argument that patriotism is the highest dharma, which a traditional Hindu would have never even dreamt of saying. So this is modern Hinduism for you, and I put this before you because this is also what Gandhi internally believed. He was consistently making one argument, that his life's mission was not religion, it was not politics, it was something higher than both. It was something about India itself, the very conception of India. Okay, now that ends the first part. I hope I have some more time, at least 5 or 10 minutes. Let me now go on to the modifications carried out by Gandhi into these arguments. These are equally interesting, and I think you will probably be able to make some sense of them. First, for Gandhi, there can be no politics divorced from religion. Now, this is completely anti-secular in terms of the Western understanding of secularism. But Gandhi would not have it. He never believed in divorcing religion completely from politics. But I would also have to say that in his understanding, religion was not very different from spirituality. This is not dogmatic doctrine and religion that he was talking about. He was talking about spirituality, which is a more sophisticated level of consciousness than is dogmatic religion. Gandhi, and this is important, I think it's an important argument to make. Gandhi reverses the relationship in Hinduism, in traditional Hinduism, between ethics and religion, between morality and religion. Traditional Hinduism never recognized morality to be independent of religion. Those of you who know a little philosophy and religion would probably agree with me. Traditional Hinduism always subordinated morality to religion. Religion was always higher than morality, which I know irked Ram Mohan a bit, because I think Ram Mohan was as passionate about moral goodness as he was about religious goodness. But Gandhi reverses this completely. How does he reverse it? He reverses it by a very famous utterance that he came out with in the 1920s, when he says that, for me, God is not truth. Truth is God. See, this is again something very astonishing for a Hindu to say. It has never been said before, I'm pretty sure. And I'd be very happy if someone can demonstrate to me the case of a Hindu saying that morality comes before religion, or at least it is autonomous of religion. Third, Gandhi's tendency to essentialize religion, which is to say that, at Quilon, I think in the late 19th, Quilon is a town in Kerala, as you know. speaking at Quilon in the 1930s, he said, if tomorrow Hinduism was to go, was to vaporize, gone completely, even then, if we still had the opening lines of Ishopanishad, Hinduism would still be saved. Now, the problem in putting Hinduism or defining Hinduism in this way is that the Hindus themselves were never agreed on what their scripture was. I give you a very common example. Think of the Arya Samaj and the Brahmo Samaj as two major reformist bodies of the 19th century. The Brahmo Samaj and the Arya Samaj never agreed on what their sources of Hinduism would be. One of them agreed on Vedas, the other one agreed on the Upanishads. The Vedas and Upanishads, although they are commonly called Shruti, are very different. Whereas the Brahmo Samaj was almost entirely based on Upanishadic philosophy, the Arya Samaj critiqued the fact that the Brahmo Samaj based themselves on Upanishadic thought because they felt that termed them womanly. And these are actually Lala Lajpat Rai's words, that if you follow Upanishads, you turn womanly. You can't be masculine with Upanishadic philosophy. You've got to be Vedic. So, and Vedic is somehow, manly, virile, something very strong, which the Hindus required at that time. Fourth, for Gandhi, religions could be looked at objectively, dispassionately, but it was best looked at from the inside. As I said some time back, only a practitioner of a certain religion could best understand that particular religion. Next, for Gandhi, each religion had a distinct or unique quality about itself, which no other religion had to the same extent. It may have a bit of it, but not to the same extent. And this is also a form of essentializing religions, but it's an interesting argument, and so I wanted to put this before you. He finds that love is a defining element in Christianity. Monotheism is a defining element in Islam. Compassion or karuna is a defining element in Buddhism. Anekantavada, the many-sidedness of truth in Jainism, and the cosmic unity of all life in Hinduism. Now, because each religion had a specialized, unique content about it, Gandhi believed that all of us had something to learn from religions other than ourselves. If every religion had everything in it, or did not specialize in one aspect, there would be no reason for that. So this, I think, reinforces, and strengthens Gandhi's argument for inter-religious borrowing. You remain rooted in your religion when you do open up yourself to concretely and positively borrowing the good elements that you find in other religions. I think this is best captured in the phrase Sarva Dharma Sadbhav. Respect and have a love for all traditions, even outside yours. The problem with Gandhi's conception of the practitioner being the best representative of that particular religion is the following. On the one hand, he says that you have to trust a Hindu or a Vaishnav to speak about Vaishnavism, a Shakto to speak about Shaktism, and so on. But you also know that Gandhi was horrified by the practice of animal sacrifice at Kalighat. He consistently criticized that. My question to Gandhi would have been this, that if you are saying on the one hand that understand religion from the eye of the practitioner, why criticize animal worship? Because the Shaktas, I'm sure, have a reason for it. If you see it from their perspective, it would be legitimate. So I think Gandhi was not very consistent about this argument. He generally did make the argument, but I think it has its limitations, as I just demonstrated. Finally, and this is the one major modification that Gandhi did, and it's a major modification, and this is the whole thing that brought me to investigate the religion of Gandhi and his conception of Hinduism, which is this, Surprisingly, I don't know if you know this or realize this, for Gandhi, Rama and Krishna are not historical figures. He disbelieved in even the Ram of Tulsidas. He says Tulsidas doesn't speak of Dashrath ka beta. This Ram is not the son of Dashrath. He is not a historical figure. He is a conception. He is an idea. He is an idea which represents certain things, certain values to a Hindu. Now, if this is so, what is this great turmoil that is happening in this country today about historicizing Rama and historicizing Krishna by building their birthplaces? Right? I mean, was this really necessary? I don't know. It's a speculation that I have to make. If Gandhi were alive today, would he have sided with the Ram Janambhoomi problem? Where would his position lie? That's a question that I can leave for you to think about. Very quickly, and I take not more than 3 or 4 minutes from here on. One major problem in Gandhi's conception of religion and his approach to religion itself is that if you take the position that religions can be studied only from the inside, this severely discourages the academic study of religion. Because in academic study of religion, you subject all religions to a common set of questions, a common set of interrogations. You have no different yardsticks for different religions. You have common yardsticks for all religions. That is how you can study comparative religion. I was associated with the Jamia Department of Comparative Religion, and I realized this for myself. How poor we are in terms of comparing religions. I think all over India, and I was speaking on this question only 2 days back, about how not more than 5 to 6 universities in all of India have departments of religion. Somehow, this legacy of Nehruvian India has still hung on, which believes that religion is at the basis of all communal writing and all things that are evil. Okay. How much time should I end here?
No, sir. You have ample time. You can
take.
You can call.
Okay.
You can conclude.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. One problem which Gandhi's Hinduism and the Hinduism of the 19th century has left us with, it's a legacy of Reform Hinduism, I should say, that Hindus still haven't expressed any curiosity about other traditions, other than their own, I mean. I compare this very funnily. I compare this with the quantum of scholarship that the West has on India and the quantum of fellowship that the Indians have on the West. Can you name half a dozen Indian scholars who are comparable to the best of Western scholars on Hinduism or Indian history or culture in general? We don't seem to take an interest on matters outside Hinduism and of India. And I can say this even of scholarship. How many Indians research the West? Tell me. I find no one practically. How many Indians learn foreign languages to be able to research Western histories or even Far Eastern histories or even Latin American histories, right? So this is a hangover, I think, from the fact that pre-modern Hindus never showed any curiosity for religions outside Hinduism. B.D. Chattopadhyay, as you would have surely heard about, has brought this out very clearly, that in Sanskrit, in the Sanskritic languages, in Sanskritic literature, there is no word or no conception about the Muslim foreigner. Why is it that Hindus describe Muslims as Turks and Pathans and Afghans, not as Muslims? I haven't found a satisfactory answer. If you read works beginning from about the 15th century down to the 18th century, they are always addressed in ethnic terms, not in religious terms. Does that indicate a lack of curiosity about other religions? I don't know. I mean, I will have to think more about it, but this is something very noticeable. Similarly, Hindus have not, in the 19th century, for example, have not showed any particular curiosity for even Christianity. Why speak of Islam? I can think of at least two major figures, or three rather, Hindus who converted to Christianity and who have studied Hinduism, even after conversion. I can think of Krishna Mohan Bandyopadhyay. I can think of Lal Bihari Dey. I can think of Nilkant Gore from Maharashtra. I can think of Pandita Ramabai. So there are four at least who, even having converted, knew their tradition and studied Hinduism. The Hindus, on the other hand, have perhaps not showed any major degree of theological, intellectual, academic interest in Christianity as a tradition. Okay, I think we are nearing the end of just two more points very briefly. I think there's a problem with Gandhi's associating non-violence only with cow protection. I don't know why the cow of all animals should be protected and not other animals. If it's a case of showing karuna or compassion for life, all animals should deserve it, not just the cow. And frankly, how many Hindus refrain from eating beef these days? I think the number is huge. I mean, we think of young Bengal of the early 19th century of having eaten beef and so on. I think my guess is that a good number of Hindus in Calcutta today eat beef and beef products. Now, is this kind of a Hindu going to relate to Gandhi's Hinduism? I doubt it. Gandhi is certainly within his right to plead for cow protection. But I think the question is larger than just cow protection. The question is about protecting and saving animal life, saving animals from being subjected to cruelty. I think that's a far bigger question than just cow protection. My last point, and I'll end here. Ambedkar's main critique against Gandhi was that he supported the idea of varna, if not caste. We all know that Gandhi was against untouchability, very severely against it. He was one of the champions of the temple entry movement in South India. Because of him, the Devdasi institution also suffered. It was ultimately legislated out by law. And he really did not, as long as he was alive, he did not make caste an important identity marker in his whole life. I contrast that to Ram Mohan, who, despite saying such high-flown things about religion and society, would never take off his sacred thread as a Brahmin. Neither did Vidyasagar, by the way. I mean, you so glorify Vidyasagar, but Vidyasagar was very much a Brahmin in certain ways, and he remained a Brahmin. Right? So, Gandhi was not particularly, a person who wanted to flaunt his caste or make caste the basis of discrimination. But he somehow, and this has not been really explained so far, why he stuck to the idea of varna is something which calls for an explanation. He did believe in varna. He did believe in varnashram, if not caste, and if not untouchability. But this is where he differed sharply with people like Phule, Periyar, and Ambedkar. All the three of them believed that the sanctity for all the atrocities in Hinduism, the social evils of untouchability, of keeping away people, discrimination, they were all rooted in Hinduism as a religion. Take away Hinduism and these things will fall out of place. Surely Gandhi would not have agreed with that. For him, Hinduism and religion were very deeply entrenched in his heart, something which he would have never abandoned. Gandhi was not a revolutionary in terms of conceptualizing Hinduism or religion in general, but he was certainly radical in certain ways. And as I tried to demonstrate, he both accepted and rejected certain ideas or values which he imbibed from earlier Hinduism, modern Hinduism. And in the end, I think Gandhi was not a typical Hindu in many ways. I mean, for today, for a person to say that I don't believe in Rama and Krishna as historical, as devatas, as gods, as avatars, is something very courageous. Gandhi somehow had the courage to say that he did not believe in uh, Rama and Krishna as avatars. He believed in them as conceptions, as ideals. Even his Ram Rajya was an ideal. The fact that it was a religious utopia also, it was a religious idiom, is a different thing. And that brings together the connections that Gandhi always made between religion and politics. Thank you. I'll end there.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful lecture. Now I request all the participants to please ping any question if you have. Please put on chat box. Shreya, can you hear me?
Yes, Dada, I can hear you.
Yeah. If any question there, chat box.
No, Dada, we don't have any
Okay.
question till
Only
now.
compliment.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Okay.
Can I ask
Yes,
a
yes, ma'am.
question?
Yeah, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes,
Shravanti, ma'am,
Ram.
you can also.
Yes. Uh, Sir, it's wonderful to listen your presentation. I'm absolutely, what do I say, absolutely overwhelmed by listening to your lecture and your presentation. So I just have a few questions which I want to put before you. So
I
one
hope they're
is,
not too. I hope they're not too difficult.
no, sir, I don't have the daring mood, nor do I have the capacity to ask you such questions. So very,
Okay, please go. Please go on.
the humble few questions. So you spoke about Gandhi's way of inter-caste borrowing, inter-religious borrowing, and you say that different religions can actually take ideas from other religions, and in that way they can flourish. So do you think that one problem with the 19th century Hinduism was it was too radical? One way, on one hand, we had the Young Bengal movement, which was so obsessed with Christianity and the way of anglicizing Hindus. And Madhusudan Dotto, Gaur Chandra Bosha, Bonku Bihari Dotto, and they were so absolutely obsessed with the West that they wanted to do away with everything Hinduism in them. And on the other hand, we have Radhanaran Boshu and other people supporting the Sanatan Dharma, that at times they also felt that it is just a place for Hindus and no Muslims. So do you think that one problem with the 19th century Indian reformers was that there was lack of equilibrium, there was lack of moderation. They were either too much radical or they were, conservative or kind of very traditional. And there was nothing in between. That is one question, sir. Second question is, Gandhi did not support caste, but Gandhi did support Borno. And this was also very well brought about by Nirmal Kumar Ghosh. Nirmal Kumar Ghosh also thought that Borno could be supported. Why? Because he said in his thesis of Hindu method of tribal absorption, he went on saying that when the caste people were given one particular occupation in the Dharma system and they can cling to it, that gives them a lot of economic monopoly and economic security which the tribal people did not have. So do you think, sir, Gandhi can be justified when he said that Bornos can be emboldened, Bornos can be supported as against, and we can have revulsion against caste, but Bornos are well protected and they can be broached for? That is my second question. So my third question is, you spoke a lot about 19th century reformers, you spoke about Ram Mohan Roy, you spoke about Vidyasagar, you spoke about Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Why did you, sir, leave behind Bhudev Mukhopadhyay? Bhudev Mukhopadhyay was very much a contemporary at that point of time. He was a classmate of Michael Madhusudan Dotto, and I mean, this Ram Mohan Roy, I mean, he is not about, he was very much into that space. Sir, do you think, actually I'm currently studying Bhudev Mukhopadhyay, and actually, sir, I belong to Netaji Subhash Open University. I'm an assistant professor in sociology, and we have been writing study materials on Bhudev. That is the reason, sir, the entire 19th century Hindu social reformers have attracted me so much. And thank you, sir, so much for your distinctions and your clarifications between Brahmo Samaj and the Adi Samaj, and the way I never knew that Upanishad was very womanly and they were so, so manliness about the Vedic. I never knew that interpretation. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your wonderful scholarly rendition. Thank you, sir.
Okay, may I answer those questions first, and then we can take more questions if there are. No, I think you're quite right in indicating that sometimes people of the 19th century went to extremes. But I don't think you cite the correct examples. I think on one hand, one kind of extreme is certainly the young Bengal. But the other kind of extreme are people like Krishna Prasanna Sen and Shashadha Tarko Chudamani. See, those are people you probably haven't heard of them.
No, sir. No, sir.
And you
Sir, will you repeat the names?
Yeah, let him say. Let him say.
Krishna Prasanna Sen and
Okay.
Pandit Shashadhar Tarko Chudamani. If you read my Hindu revivalism, you'll get to know something about them. There are some descriptions. Now, these people are not only conservative, they are obsolete people. And Bankim was initially attracted to the lectures of Shashadhar, which was given in the early 1880s. He went to just one lecture and after that he stopped going, saying that this is not the Hinduism that I want. It's very clearly written in his Prochar, that the journal that he edited. So it is possible for us to make distinction between the two extremes and say that there was a middle path. I think Bankim and the Brahmo Samaj would constitute the middle path,
Yes,
basically.
to an extent. To an extent.
Right? Something which sets apart from all these trends is the idea of Hinduism becoming a missionary religion.
Yes, yes.
This was never the case earlier. I think that this occurs with Vivekananda. Hinduism becomes a global religion. You see, the thing about Hinduism was, traditionally at least, that if you are born a Hindu, you are a Hindu. You can never convert somebody to Hinduism.
Exactly.
But in the 1890s, the Arya Samaj started the practice of converted Hindus back to Hinduism. And yes, so Hinduism has undergone this kind of transformation, which you should be aware of. About your second question, I think we still have to understand what Gandhi meant by the term Varno. I don't think anybody has really seriously worked on this phenomenon. One has to differentiate the two, the Varno and the caste, and how Gandhi defended Varno as against caste. Because in his time, Varno would have been as redundant as caste itself. And who followed Varnashram in the late 19th century or early 20th century, right? So why did Gandhi still adhere to the idea of Varnashram is something we have to understand a little more closely. And I would urge young researchers like you to think about this more seriously. Bhudev is interesting. The reason why I did not include Bhudev is because he's not a reformer in the first place. Right? He was not associated with any reformist activity, though I find him extremely important a figure, especially his Shamajik Prabandho. Only a few hours back, I was recommending somebody who was interested in indigenous sociological theories, and I recommended Bhudev to her, saying that you ought to read Shamajik Prabandho, which is, I think, the first indigenous sociological counter to Western sociological understandings of India. So Bhudev is a very important figure, but again, he doesn't take an interest in reformism. In fact, if you read his Achar Prabandho and Parivarik Prabandho, he would appear to be as very, very conservative. Incidentally, if I may add here, if it's relevant at all, Bhudev was the inspiration behind Chandranath Boshu. Have you heard of Chandranath Boshu? Chandranath Boshu, people don't know this. Chandranath Boshu is the first Indian, I think, as far as I am aware, to coin the word Hindutva, not Savarkar. Savarkar did it much later. He did this in 1892. He is the first Hindu to use and coin the word Hindutva. But he had a certain understanding which is very different from Savarkar understanding. So Bhudev inspired people like Chandranath Boshu. But neither Chandranath Boshu nor Bhudev were interested in reform. They have a different understanding altogether. But that's a separate subject by itself. Let me not get into that. But thank you for those questions.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
Sir, will you just
Thank
repeat
you.
that book you said, the book on Hindu revivalism. That's the name I wanted. The book on Hindu
Hindu, it's called Hindu revivalism in 19th century Bengal from Oxford University Press. It's also available online, I think, these days. I think it is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any question, you can put, and you can unmute yourself, and then you can put your honorable speaker. Tapati Di, if you have any comments, please. Tapati Di.
I think
Tapati Di is here with us.
her mic is
my
muted.
question is very simple on the cow question.
Oh, the cow
Because
question.
The cow question looms so large in our everyday life. Why did the cow how and when did the cow protection come up? I think it was very important to agriculture. Very important to agriculture, very quiet and very easy to maintain. What could be the other reasons? Why did Gandhi talk about cow protection?
Well, you see the Congress manifesto on, by the way, let me also add at the very beginning, the first person to bring, I don't know if you know this, the first person to bring a cow protection resolution within the Congress was the Raja of Tahirpur, who was a Bengali, right? The motion failed because the Congress would not accept it. So, attempts to introduce cow protection legally and as a part of political scenario had been going on since the 1890s. As I said, Raja of Tahirpur, probably, if I'm not mistaken, he tried to introduce this sometime early 1890s, 1893, if I'm not mistaken. Behind the cow protection movement, there were two issues or two arguments. One was the economic value of cattle, as you rightly said, that in India, the cow was indispensable to agriculture, and killing of cows would adversely affect agriculture. That is still an argument which holds today, because in certain areas of India, we still depend on, animal power and so on. But there was also a religious and a cultural argument to this. Gandhi's attitude to the cow protection question was somehow to persuade the Muslims to respect the attitude that the Hindus had towards the cow. Cow killing, as you would know, by the early 20th century became a major issue in communal rioting. One party would kill the cow and put it before a temple. The other party would kill a pig and put the beheaded pig before a mosque. So killing of cattle and pigs, animals which were rejected by these two religions, was a big part of communal rioting and communal tension in 19th century and early 20th century India. So Gandhi's attempt was really to bring a consensus on this question. He tried to get Muslims to respect the Hindu sentiment about cow and to emphasize the economic value of cattle, so that the Muslims too would refrain from killing cattle if there was an alternative. Of course, I must add here that Gandhi never insisted at any time that the Muslims stop killing cows. He was too much of a sound politician and a good human being to realize that you could not enforce or force somebody to follow these measures. So cow killing was it's like music before mosques. It's another question which created a lot of communal tension in the early 20th century. So that is how I see the cow killing question. My only critique of Gandhi about the cow killing question is that he singles out cow somehow, which doesn't seem very logical for protection and so on. Why not other animals, which are also used for agriculture?
The other question, Dr. Shen, is how far was Gandhi a practicing Hindu in his own personal life?
Well, the strong point about Gandhi is in his personal religious life is that he understood or accepted, shall I say, the universality of religion in both its negative aspects and positive aspects. Negative meaning, as I said, the minimalist aspect, that there was something common to all religions, so we can very safely adhere to a universal religion. He followed that. He believed that there were certain doctrines common to all religions, like the conception of God, the pervasiveness of God, morality, kindness, compassion, love for their fellow human being, and so on. He also, very interestingly and significantly, believed in the positive universality, which is to say that if you look at his ashram life, they rigorously followed two things. A, there would be common prayer meetings where scriptures from various religions would be read out before the ashram inmates. And they would also hold common festivals, Parsi festivals, Islamic festivals, Hindu festivals. All ashram inmates were supposed to follow them. This was, I think, the more positive and syncretic aspect to his universalism. Hindus generally followed one or the other, not both. I can think of nobody like Gandhi who accepts both forms of universalism. The universalism by subtraction, that you remove all the extra bits and get to the core, and universalism by adding on, by adding various ideas, values to your religion, so that your religion itself is enriched. I think that is the uniqueness about Gandhi's religion. He was certainly a practicing Hindu. Whether or not he believed in Ram as a historical figure or not, the fact that when hit by the assassin's bullet, he invokes the name of Ram certainly suggests that he was, in his heart, a deeply, deeply pious religious being. That's what I see it.
Thank you, Dapotidi, also, and also our distinguished speaker.
Thank you.
We are now in concluding session. Before concluding this webinar, I have small message to our participants that we have already provided a feedback link, and so please fill up the feedback link and get your e-certificate as usual. Now I thank you. I hand over the mic to our Honorable General Secretary to conclude the session, Professor Siddhartha Gorai. Dr. Roy?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Am I
Yes, sir.
audible? Yes, sir. I have nothing to say of anything after this outstanding and very interesting lecture, for which I, along with all the members of our organization, were eagerly waiting. It was really very exciting, and we came to know many aspects of Gandhi's conception of Hinduism, which at least I did not know. I am a student of political history, and in fact, I know. But one thing always haunted me. I always thought one thing: the man who spoke of Ramrajyo, he became the worst victim of religious fundamentalism. And now many things has become clear to me. Thank you very much, sir, Professor Sen, that you have enlightened us and you have come to the platform of our organization. Hope you stay well, and thank you again. And we conclude this session.
Thank you very much. And once again, I'm grateful for your invitation, and I hope to extend my association with your body, your very
Thank
active
you.
and useful body.
In future, we shall again seek your kind cooperation, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you. তা শেষ করে দিলাম প্রসেনজিৎ।
ওকে স্যার, ওকে স্যার।
হ্যাঁ, শেষ করে দাও।
Now we can end the webinar.